Hello out there. I'm the oldest nerd. It's time to talk movies with Professor O, and Professor O joins us as usual from his study in Oklahoma, and I am, of course, here in Texas. How you doing today? We both have rain where we're at.
Terrific rainy day out there. Just no lightning, so that Bella can come from a casket. It's not that dark and gloomy, but fairly pretty gloomy. Just no lightning.
Well, today we're going to be talking about Plan 9 from Outer Space and give you kind of an idea what that film is about. And then we're going to talk about Ed Wood, which was a film that was based on the director of Plan 9 from Outer Space, writer and director, by the same name. And this film about Ed Wood speaks not only to him, but to the way B movies were made in the 50s. And it's an interesting film. And we'll talk about that after a bit. But first, Plan 9 from Outer Space. Let's just talk about what it was originally supposed to be about. It was originally titled Grave Robbers from Outer Space.
Right. And I think they mentioned that line even in the movie. Just one. There's a tiny tidbit, but you're watching the movie, and there's a take from the movie that says "Grave Water Robbers from Outer Space," as if they had shot that and then they changed the name to Plan 9.
Yeah.
Did that
Well,
come up?
apparently
Yeah,
it was first sneaked out as Grave Robbers, and then the backers of it, which were a Baptist congregation, decided that sounded too bad, and they wanted it a more neutral title, and so that's where Plan 9 from Outer Space came from. It was another line that was in the picture where they were the aliens had several plans in order to try to save the universe from what the Earth was about to discover, which was a double talk bomb that could destroy half the universe. So
right.
they were trying to gently lead Earth away, and apparently the first eight attempts weren't so good. And Plan 9 was to be the plan that was going to basically raise up the recently deceased. And I don't really know what they were supposed to do after that. But
That's a good point.
however that worked, that was basically the understanding of what the film was. Now,
It's like a little bit like The Day the Earth Stood Still meets a zombie movie.
yeah,
Meets because there is that intent of the day. You Earthlings don't understand the powers. First, you had the firecracker, and then you developed TNT, and then it literally starts off with the firecracker in the
yeah,
history of our powderized violence, and it all works its way. Then it goes to the atomic bomb, and the hydrogen bomb, and but
yeah.
yeah,
They mentioned the hydrogen bomb causes all the air to become explosive, which of course is not how it works. But in that time, it's likely that's all that Ed Wood knew when he was writing it. So
good point.
that went that way. But the thing that though I want to point out first, the first time I ever heard of this movie was back in the 70s, and it had been one of those late night TV movies and things like that, Fear Theater, that they would have on Friday nights. And you stay up late on Friday night and you watch the scary movies. And a lot of these B movies were made with almost no budget and had maybe a week or two to do them sometimes. And so what you had here was a film. Nobody intends to ever make a bad film. This film just kind of turned out bad. And part of what messed it up was that it was shown on television. Now they made the movie in like 1957. It was released in 1959 because they still needed money in order to get it printed and distributed. And by 1962, it was already being shown on television. And what the problem was something you know more about in aspect ratios.
Right.
They shot it in what's called the Academy ratio, which was the old television standard, which was the 4:3, right?
Right.
And their intention though was to mask it and show it in widescreen. which they
Right.
did in their original theater goings.
That's right. That's
So
right.
when they showed it on television, they just showed it in the Academy, and the stuff that was supposed to be masked wasn't. And so
Right.
you would see microphones and lights hanging into the frame, which was not a careless act by anybody on the set. Their cinematographer actually was a pretty good fellow. He had
Right.
done some bigger stuff, but the stuff like that made it look worse than it really was.
Oh yeah, it made it where you could see the boom mic from above,
Yeah.
the boom mic, dangling from above, lights at times, stuff from below that was not meant to be seen, because right, instead of 1.1 to 1.85, kind of the Academy ratio, all of a sudden it's 4:3 for television, and you're exactly right. All that stuff was masked is now visible, and that just it's plenty funny enough and enjoyable. So bad it's good, but it didn't need that extra stuff
Yeah.
that they didn't mean to show.
Not to say that some of its very limited budget. I think that was there's no real good records on how much it cost to make the film, and we don't know anything about how much money it ever made afterwards. It was a fairly short release, and it had to
Right.
do not because the film was bad, but because the distribution company went into bankruptcy about a year after the film was released, and so it was taken out of circulation prematurely. And that was the situation there. But then that's why it went to television so quickly, is because it lost its theater distribution. For a while, if you had a drive-in movie in town, this movie might play for 5 years. And so that was the case with this. Was just a distributor that ran out of money, and that's the story of this whole film. They ran out of money before they could do certain things.
Right.
For instance, in the case where one of the part where the policemen come in, they drive and they're in the daytime until they park the car, and then they're at night, and then they go back to the car and it's the daytime. And the way movies were made in those days, and probably still, is that you film nighttime scenes in the daylight, and then you add in post-production the filtering so that it looks like night. Because if you ever shot anything at night, you wouldn't see anything, right?
And you can also close down your aperture quite a bit, add some light, a little bit of lighting. I'm thinking of their budget. They don't necessarily have a lot, like the big 18,000 watt lights to when you're lighting. When you're actually adding light to the sun, you need a ton of light to do anything because the sun's so bright. But larger feature films could do that. They would have lights that were meant to be used outside, generally big HMI lights, and they had 18,000 watts worth of power. Had to use a generator, but I don't think they had any of this. But lower budget movies could do it. They would close down the aperture some. Always the lights from the car would be on, and then as if your characters act like, oh, it's night, I'm having a little trouble seeing, even though it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon, it kind of sells. But somehow this just doesn't sell as well where they're outdoors. And you're right, they didn't add anything in post to make it look like night. So yeah, you've got a really continuity problems between the cemetery scenes and driving the car up to the cemetery.
Yeah.
And every time you cut back and forth, it's some of the worst continuities you'll see.
It was, and apparently what it was that they hadn't fully paid the film lab, and so they didn't do some of that on purpose because they weren't getting paid. They weren't going to do all that post stuff, and so they released the film without being able to do anything about that. And same thing with, I don't know that I could be so kind when one of the actors trips over a gravestone and it turns out it's styrofoam or paper or something that it kind of just wobbles a bit, and they did not reshoot that. But
No.
Who knows? They were shooting in black and white because they couldn't afford color stock. That's how they would have been in widescreen even then, was that they could do that in black and white, and they just didn't have the money to do color. And I don't know that I don't know if it helped anything.
if the director of photography really was colorblind, then that actually probably worked fairly well with him shooting in black and white. Did
Yeah.
you find out if he was colorblind?
I don't think so. There's so many apocryphal things that were said about this film, including, for instance, Tor Johnson, who played the inspector, who's later the one of the zombies, the big guy.
Right.
He was called the poor man's Sidney Greenstreet. And
Right.
there are some places that claim that this was his first movie. He actually he was a professional wrestler.
Right.
But he had been in movies since The Silence. He actually had the needed, big guy parts, and so he was fairly experienced, despite the fact that he didn't look like he knew what he was doing. It was all part of his whatever you might call acting. They did have a couple of good people in there. Gregory Walcott is listed as the lead on this, and he had done a number of character acting parts in previous and in later movies. He acted all the way into the 70s. And Tom Keene, who was a B-movie cowboy, was another person in there that was fairly competent. And and then there were some people who were just amateurs. The people that helped finance the film, they gave each of them a part. They had Tor Johnson's son, who was about 30, had contacts with the local police department and got them to let them borrow police cruisers. Although there were three of them, and they were all different year models, and so they were shown as the same car in several places. But they're hoping they don't notice that. But
you do notice when there are lights and sirens on top of the car, it almost looked like stock footage, because he would use stock footage. I thought, oh, okay, he got stock footage, but instead he just didn't match up the right car. You do notice when in the exterior. Well, I say the actual not shot on the studio shot of the car outside. It's got sirens and lights on it, and then they cut to the same car. And again, this was a day-night thing, rolling up at night in front of the cemetery, and it doesn't have lights on it, and it's some of the strangest mismatches. One that got me, and you've done great, but just speaking of continuity, got me, is in the scene later in the film, and of course we're relying on our audience to have seen this film, which again, it's got a little bit of the day the Earth stood still. It's a warning from space. You Earthlings, you stupid Earthlings are playing with biblical fire almost. And what are we going to do? And so the aliens are there to warn us. Their method of warning us is to reanimate dead people, which is pretty strange. And like you mentioned, to what end? we never can figure out how that plan is actually going to work. But there's that one scene where it's back at the house on the patio near the end of the film, of the original film, Plan 9, when I think it's Tor Johnson is and definitely Elvira, they come onto the the people are horrified. They come onto the patio, and the policeman is shooting them, and somehow in the midst of all that, we actually lose track of where the policeman went. And there's only like 5 people in the shot. And then at the end of the shot, they say, "Oh, I almost forgot about Jim down here." Yeah, and I'm like, "What did happen?"
They ran out of money, is what happened, I think.
I guess so.
They mentioned that not Elvira, the Vampira, Mela Nurmi was her name. She was paid. I'm pushing the wrong button. Here we go. She was paid $200 to be in this film. Right. And she was given dialogue, and she refused to read any of it. So she had a wordless part in the film, and that goes to something we'll talk about in a minute. That Ed Wood was not the greatest dialogue writer. Perhaps better. Not
speaking in this film could be a pretty good decision, to tell you the truth.
maybe even worse than a certain creator and director of a space opera we're both familiar with. So
Well put. Well,
anyway,
worse than that.
she was
You're
paid $200 to be in this film. She put her makeup on at home and then took the bus to the studio. So this is high Hollywood here.
That is in Ed Wood. You see her get on the bus.
Yeah. Now the thing about this was that Plan 9 was based on the fact that he had film of Bela Lugosi. When he made his first notable film, Ed Wood was introduced to Bela Lugosi by a mutual friend. And by this time, Lugosi was a drug addict, an alcoholic. Nobody would hire him for anything, and terribly typecast. And so he offered him the ability to continue to be in films, which Lugosi was good for. And so they became pretty close friends. And so they collaborated on 3 films. And this last one, he died. Some people say in the things here that he died while the movie was being made and didn't live for the end of the production. Actually, he died a couple of years before this film was made. There was some footage that Ed Wood just took of him outside Tor's house. It wasn't even Lugosi's house. It was the big guy. Doggone it. What did I say his name was? Tor. Anyway. George Johnson. Okay. Anyway, so they filmed him coming out of Tor's house, and they have him in the cape because he had kept the cape from playing Dracula way back when, and they also did some stuff of him walking through a cemetery, and that's all they had. They had maybe 2 minutes of film on him, and that was supposed to be footage that was for another film, and he died during that. And he had to shelve the film. I forget what they were going to call that other film that never got made. But anyway, that was what happened. He stopped it and didn't know what to do with it, and then came up with the idea of Plan 9 and that he could use the Bela Lugosi thing. And once again, he wanted to use Bela Lugosi because he was a known name, and that would bring people in to watch the film. So that was his plan there. His plan. So they came up with this idea on how they could use that footage and make it work, and then make a science fiction thing out of it. And then they realized they were going to need filler stuff. And so they found that Ed Wood's wife's chiropractor was willing to work for whatever they were going to pay for that to be in the films. And they gave him a cape and having it hold him up in front of his face, even though he was taller, he had different hairstyle, and didn't look anything like Bela Lugosi. But that was in some shots, it's the chiropractor, and maybe 2 minutes worth of it is Bela Lugosi, and they spend some of that more than once during the film. So
the scene in Ed Wood where he discovers the chiropractor is, I think there's just maybe the shape of the head, because Johnny Depp looks up and he's sitting by him real close in a bar, and the chiropractor, and he sees that's the kind of basically says that's the shape of Bella's head. And another character says, I can't remember who it was, but says it didn't look like him at all. But he said, but then they thought, well, what if they put a cape in front of it? And that's where that idea was born. And that's, I was surprised from watching. I had seen Plan 9 a long time. I've seen bits and pieces, the whole thing, just various. Even Johnny Carson ran Plan 9 from outer space, and I can remember from the early '80s or late '70s in like 5-minute segments. And so I can remember, and I'd seen the whole film a long time ago. So then I watched Ed Wood. Then I watched Plan 9 again. Mm-hmm. And and I can't remember exactly where I was going with that, but it was usually the way of watching it. You'd watch Plan 9, then watch Ed Wood.
Right.
This time I watched Ed Wood, and watched Plan 9, but it was really delightful. And but yeah, the way they discovered the chiropractor was an interesting, and it sounds like fairly historical. That was the actual chiropractor that they used in the film, and they bring that out in Ed Wood.
Yeah, yeah. And we'll talk about that in more detail later. But there's one thing that they did in here that was something that would travel into other science fiction shows. And it's an important thing. And we got to give Ed Wood credit for this creativity. They developed, according to one of the characters, the military had developed a language computer. They called it a dictaorbitary. And basically, it was a universal translator. That's where that idea came from.
Right. I did not know he had put. So the military actually was working on this thing, and
In the film. In the film.
Yeah, that's it. Okay.
And in the film, the general there says that it's they have a dictaorbitary, or as you on Earth put it, the language computer, and so there was apparently the aliens had one and we had one, and so that was how we were able to communicate with them.
And that's another universal translator by any other name. And they decide to, so many. You're right to give them some.
So we can add to the things that Gene Roddenberry stole was from Plan 9 from Outer Space.
And yeah. Well, and the scene you talked about, and there's lots more to mind from Plan 9. I'm jumping to the end. But speaking of the films, of ideas that have been used later, the idea of having the sun. Here you have the sun. Imagine the sun. It's a big trash can. This is near the end of the movie. Garbage can. Gas can. Gas can. It's a big gas can. The sun he's explaining the danger of selenites. This is the.
That was the big explosive. The bigger than H bombs. Yeah.
Exactly. Bigger than the H bomb. And the people from the aliens from Plan 9 had discovered it. And we will discover it soon, they are sure. And he explains it. It's like, imagine the sun is like a giant gas can, and you have the Earth as, and it's kind of a gas can too. And all between the Earth and the sun is this material, kind of like gas vapors and gas itself. That reminded me a little bit of what was going to happen to us in Project Hail Mary. The way the doomsday device that we have to fight in Project Hail Mary sounded a little bit like Seleranite. As if
now something something that Ed Wood was known for was let me switch this on for my hands full. This is a book called The Golden Turkey Awards. It's written by Michael Medved, who's one time was a fairly well-known movie reviewer along with his brother, Harry Medved. And in the Golden Turkey Awards, they put Ed Wood as the worst director ever, and Plan 9 from Outer Space being the worst movie ever. And but one of the things that they point out in this, and other than the premise of the book, which is apparently to make fun of some things, and they do, they also point out some of the more interesting things about how these directors worked. And in this case, Ed Wood's talent was in writing dialogue. And here's some of his dialogue. The world is a strange place to live in. All those cars, all going someplace, all carrying humans which are carrying out their lives. But life, even though its changes are slow, moves on. That's Shakespeare, isn't it? So.
Yeah. There's. Yeah. There are so many lines in Plan 9 or in his other films too that you're just kind of gobsmacked, your jaws hitting the floor. What did I just hear? It's profound, but it's profound in another dimension.
This is my favorite too. This is the two cops talking to each other. Did you get anything out of her? True, she was frightened and in a state of shock, but don't forget, she tore her nightgown and had scratched feet. The other cop says, yeah, I hadn't thought of that.
And yeah, and speaking of one of our first films that we reviewed, where you mentioned oh gosh, one of the first films we reviewed, directed by John Huston, great detective film. Is this bringing back any memories from last summer? First of all, and you mentioned that Tor Johnson is kind of a low budget version of this.
Of Sydney Greenstreet. Yeah, you're talking about Maltese Falcon. Right.
Thank you. Yes.
Sorry, I was trying to put the book back together. It's falling to pieces.
Oh no. I'm looking at notes too, and but yeah, and that's what, and there's one of the best lines in ever where well, obviously I can tell you're the chief detective and I'm not. I'm just a beat cop. And those series of lines were amazing. It's like the dialogue you just read. It reminded me of some of the war. Just and then the cop, the detective tries to make the beat cop feel a little better. Oh no, it's just a matter of time. You're going to make it. But all the while, you get to some of the most interesting gunplay. And I decided to bring my phaser from the first pilot of Star
from the
Trek
cage, yeah.
Because I just every time you can't think of something, it's never a bad idea to tap your head with a phaser
while your finger's on the trigger.
Your back,
Yeah, they did that. According to my research, they did that because they figured that Ed would not notice that they did that, and look to see just how much attention he was paying to their acting. And so,
are you serious?
That's absolutely what they did. Yeah.
They were messing with Ed Wood.
Yes. He had it hard enough, and they were messing around with him.
Yeah.
But
I mean, you normally in reviews, I love the way you'll find specific lines from the movie, but there's so many bad lines in this film, or at least just like the one you talked about, the human beings driving around in cars. They're strange lines. You'd basically be looking at the whole script for the film. To try and highlight.
Now, what's interesting was that this cop noticed that the woman's feet were scratched, even though she was wearing shoes. But
right.
We'll go beyond that.
And you look at what actually happened to her. She gets away cleanly from Tor. There's no scratching at all, but there was constant mismatches, continuity mismatches, not just day and night, but in the rhetoric of the film, in the lines of the film, people saying what happened, but you just watched what happened, and it wasn't at all what the cops were talking about. It was close.
And it looks like that it's just complete negligence, but you stop and think about that. You've made films before. I mean, you've been a single camera. Well, I'm not going to go that far, but I am going to say, though, you have been on film crews, and you know that it takes a lot of people in order to keep track of everything. The continuity, there's usually one person that handles the continuity. They make notes on how everything was set up and how it was lit and who was wearing what and on what side and things like that. And even in movies today, you'll find that, insignia move from one side to the other, or they'll have a knife in their hand in one scene, and on an opposite shot they won't have it. Then they'll have it back. Things like this happen even now.
Oh yeah.
But in this case, Ed Wood was the writer, the director, and essentially the producer. They credited the producer with the people that put up the money, but they had no more to do with it than just putting up the money. So he had to figure out how to finance all of this, how to shoot all of this, how it needed to be done in post, and continuity, and some things just slipped through. Plus the fact that he was barely getting along himself. He lived in a one-room apartment with his wife and kids, I think, and they barely were able to get along because anytime he had $1 ahead, he put it into making the next movie.
Right. totally obsessed with it. That's exactly right. And that's and that I think there's a little Ed Wood in a lot of in a lot of, especially when you're starting out. You look at back
Yeah.
at so many because apparently now I don't think Ed. It's funny. I don't think he started off on shooting like regular 8 films. Super 8 wasn't around when he would have what he would have been. He as a teenager he could have been shooting with regular 8, but Tim Burton shot with Super 8, and I think like
Yeah.
a lot of and that film Super 8 really does the best homage to Super 8 filmmakers.
It really does. Yeah.
And at that point in your career, you're pretty much there. You are. I was mowing lawns every $4 I'd get from mowing a lawn would go into making a Super 8 film, and it's funny you get into this this film and then an article on this film which I have more than strong quibbles with, but it does make a point. It's talking about the idea of camp and is Ed Wood intentionally when he's directing is intentionally doing a nod and a wink and kind of. And the funny thing is when you don't have a lot of means, it reminded me even in the 8th grade making Wolfman films, that I would do like I called the main police detective Joe Days.
Yeah.
And there he was taking a nap, and you always want to over narrate stuff, and I
Yeah.
would do that. Oh my,
and it
so
also saves you having to build sets and show them. So,
yeah.
and that was one of the things in this. They built a set for the alien spaceship, and just about every other location was the same flat that was just redecorated in some way. I think they used a shower curtain to cover it at one. There was a shower curtain used in 3 or 4 scenes, and only on one scene was it actually used to actually cover a shower. It was.
Right.
It was a drapery on a way to disguise the outside of their ship and the inside of their ship, or an office they were in, or wherever they were, and they made a lot of use with a very small amount of lumber. And
Right.
and I think of this. I like to have some kind of sympathy for it, because I mean, we have all been around places that had almost no money but wanted to go out and do it anyway.
Right.
And I have to admire the people who say, I don't care if we don't have a budget of making Gone with the Wind. We want to make films, and I think that's what he wanted to do. He wanted to make films, and I don't think he cared what it was. And if he had to write it, if he had to produce it, if he had to finance it, he would.
The act of making the film, they just were addicted's the wrong word, but they just loved the
Yeah.
act of making the film, and that little group of people did too. I mean, they were working for almost nothing. And in your research, how was that group of friends? I mean, did they seem like they really liked seeing it in Ed Wood? There's that's a representation I've seen of his group of friends working together. They seemed like they really liked him and liked getting on that bus in makeup and getting to the film.
Yeah, they did. I mean, some of these people had been doing films for a long time and just weren't in demand anymore. Tor
Right.
Johnson was one of those. He was
Right.
someone who was in a lot of silent movies playing the bad guy, and then once the Soundies came along, they found other people, and so he had to
You
take.
couldn't understand him.
No, you couldn't understand him either. That's the whole thing. He was Swedish, but
and
yeah, it was
and-
difficult
and
to
to-
understand Bela Lugosi for that matter.
No, that's a good point. That's a great, with his Hungarian accent. Yeah, that's exactly. And of course, in Plan 9, he doesn't say anything.
No,
I didn't realize. I thought that the only footage in Plan 9 of Bela Lugosi was the footage of him coming out of the house. But there's quite a bit of footage where you can see his face out at the cemetery.
Yes.
And that's one thing. Apparently, Ed Wood loved working with stock footage, and that is a low budget filmmaker, which I definitely was.
Well, he did use
footage.
stock footage of military firing weapons and things like
That's
that.
exactly right.
But he did do some special effects footage. I mean, you could still see the strings holding the planets and the ships, but the ships were not, as they had said in Ed Wood, paper plates. That's an apocryphal story. Actually, they did have model kits. It was model kits you could buy at Woolworths, and they built them and enhanced them a little bit a little bit of what they did in Star Wars, as a matter of fact, is of breaking down other models and making models with it, and
Right.
that's how they made the alien ship. And they added on a little wooden box onto the bottom so it would match the practical set, because they couldn't afford to build a rounder set, and so they just put flat.
Right, they added that little part of, yeah, and that actually, yeah, I will say that think of what works sometimes. You're going, okay, they actually have a door that opens, and then they're on the ground, and then they go inside that kind of airlock, and then they go up inside the ship, and that actually kind of worked. What doesn't work, oh man, is it, from having done some space movies when I was I was in high school. I had to, instead of Star Trek, I called it Interstellar Journey, for
Yeah,
my Super 8 films. But
right.
we would get, I thought you really have to build control panels, and I gotta admit, I used cardboard, and then later on I
Sure.
used wood, but I would get everybody's Christmas lights, and you had a lot of blinking lights, but at least it kind of looked like a console. That's one thing that I will say Ed Wood did not take the time to do in that spaceship model. It looks like a bunch of typewriters on desks and then they had the thing with the electric arc that the
Yeah,
actors didn't want to stand near. But
that was a Tesla coil, a small
that's
Tesla
right, of
coil.
course. That's
And there was one actor that refused to work for him because he saw it and thought it was a Jacob's ladder, and he couldn't be around any Jacob's ladder. And
ah
those are the ones where the spark goes from the bottom and up to the top. And
that's
those things are dangerous around electronics, by the way, but that's a whole different story. But the yeah, and I forget who the actor was, but we were talking about Friends, though. He did have a group of characters that he used in just about all his films, and Bela
right.
Lugosi, of course, was one because he was a big name, or at least a recognized name. And then most of the others who were willing to work for the money and have worked with Ed before and liked him, and he treated him pretty well. And I
Right.
think that
And they really did like him,
and you do see that in modern movies as well, where certain directors will have certain people that work for him all the time. I mean, Bill Murray.
the character, oh, Criswell.
No, no, no.
Criswell.
I'm not talking about the character he plays in Ed Wood. I'm
Oh,
talking about the director that he works most often with. I can't think of his name right now.
Wes Anderson.
Wes Anderson. He's been
Right.
in just about every Wes Anderson film, and
It's
that's one of those kind of things where the actor likes the director. The director likes to use the same actors because they know his method, and that works here too.
And so they had the real troupe of friends that would work for almost, and they just love the act, the creative act of making a film. And that's one thing that's why, uh, that I think is, even now, I mean, it went from being, all of us we're like the Golden Turkey Award, some of the first people to say we're actually going to bring out some of the worst. They're so bad they're good, and
Yeah,
we seem to be started to do that in the 80s. But then in the process, we also start to see, these people, what was actually working here, this group of these friends, this creative act. It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to have a good movie, but there is something to the creativity, the human spirit of creating, working together with that group of friends, that really comes out. And it comes out definitely. Ed Wood, uh,
yeah,
is shows all that process. The movie Ed Wood, of those friends working together. But even when you watch Plan 9, it is fun to watch, and you can see the fruits of their labors come upon you.
yeah,
And they may be really good fruits or bad fruits, but
yeah,
there were a couple of lines that remind, speaking of this group of friends. There was a line that says, I think it's the girlfriend, the who later married him, not the first girlfriend, with
yeah,
the woman that married him. She said, she's talking to, I believe, the backer, says, Ed is the only guy who doesn't pass judgment in this town. And then this is in Ed Wood, and then Johnny Depp says, "That's right. If I did, I wouldn't have any friends." Just a nice, that
yeah,
nobody
yeah,
passing judgment, and that, what helps them get along. Because definitely there was an eclectic group of strange outsiders, people that had been othered in society, and they found each other and cared for each other and did not pass judgment on each other. And that's bound to have been true of the true working group with Ed Wood.
Yeah, and you kind of think about people who went to drive-in movies. That's where these B movies mostly went. They were the other end of a double feature, and by that time, whoever was in the car really didn't care what came on. And yeah, it might be funny, it might not be, but you had the monsters that you needed and all of that, and it worked.
It worked.
And
Another
and
thing you
so
mentioned, a line from Ed Wood that you mentioned. He mentions that the Baptists are behind him, and they're critically watching the cemetery scene. And one of the Baptists, I forget the guy's name. He's a really good actor. He's the guy that baptized him in the movie Ed Wood.
yeah,
And this actor says he's saying, wait a minute, what about you've got continuity matches? It's daytime, it's nighttime. It mentions another couple of things that are continuity problems, and Ed Wood says filmmaking is not about the details, it's about the big picture. And that really struck me, because when you don't have any money and you're just trying to get things done, it was always about the big picture instead of because the details would slow you down and cost money. Another line that he said was because he talked about the headstones, the styrofoam headstones, day night continuity. And then he said, then Ed Wood says, don't you have any suspension of disbelief? My audience will have suspension of disbelief.
they will.
And
Yeah,
he gets so mad. This is from the movie Ed Wood. Johnny Depp gets so mad, and he runs behind. He's so frustrated with them being judgmental at his efforts. He runs into the wardrobe room of this little studio that you have discovered in your research. Goes back in the wardrobe room, and he says, "You stupid Baptists." And then you're thinking that line comes out in the movie Plan 9, not
yeah.
with Baptists, but and it was just that little sequence was just so well done, kind of talking about what it takes to try and
That's
make
true.
a movie when you don't have any budget.
Yeah. Well, let's go ahead and go on to Ed Wood. And first of all, there are a couple of things that I think we need to clear up about some of what they did. Now, I don't have any problem with Burton's films, but from other things that I've read, he obviously did not have a whole lot of information, and he filled in. I mean, you do this in any kind of biographical thing. I mean, don't expect that in the Glenn Miller story that he actually, courted his wife by, playing Little Brown Jug. But in this case, first of all, Ed Wood never wore dresses. He did wear women's clothing, but mostly pantsuits, and was not
But ever
was
while he
not.
was directing, he did not.
Oh, probably while he was
He
directing,
didn't
but
wear them while he was directing.
maybe he did, but he didn't wear dresses or skirts.
Right.
He wore pantsuits.
Right.
Those are
Not
women's
full-blown
clothing
skirts,
at the time, but he wore that, and whatever reason he did it was never made clear. But he was not by any means LBGT oriented at
Right.
this point, and he just liked it. He found it stylish or comfortable or something. And he'd been a former Marine.
Was that a true story from his?
Yeah.
Story from his mother, that his mother dressed him in women's clothes. Is that?
I have not heard that. I've not heard that.
Oh, okay.
It could have happened. Could have happened. But they made up a number of stuff to make it all kind of fit together, and
Right.
tried to make him as more unusual than he really was. He was actually except for his choice of dress up, there was no other affectation that he had, which is kind of interesting. Another thing is that his tendency to print on the first shot every time was not Ed Wood. It was another director, which is mentioned in the Golden Turkey Awards, by the name of William Bodine. And William Bodine was known as William One Shot Bodine because once he took the shot, it printed, it went in the film. There were no outtakes, and that's something that created a bit of humor from watching any of his, where sets would fall over, or the part where Tor comes in the door and the door falls off in Ed Wood is one of Bodine's things. It wasn't Ed Wood. Now, while they did kind of bounce around the grave markers in Plan 9, that was one of the many continuity errors there. But the whole idea of if things went completely south, Ed Wood did not necessarily print it, but One Shot Bodine did. Although in Bodine's idea, he had directed silent films and had made over 100 movies by the time that Ed Wood came along, and was kind of cynical about it. He did it just to make money out of it, and really couldn't understand why anybody would want to watch one of these films.
From listening to your list before the show started, you mentioned the list of his films.
Oh yeah, I got to read that for you.
It's great.
Yeah,
because it sounded like he would definitely use the title of his film so that you hearkened back to the original film, and you kind of connected to that original film in a cynical sort of way, like the eighth man instead of the third man.
Yeah,
I remember.
Yeah, they had a scene also in one of Bodine's films where someone dies and he had a smile on his face and one eye open, and they still printed that. Okay, here's my favorite film of his in 1935, Get Off My Foot. I don't know why. Mr. Cohen Takes a Walk, Windbag the Sailor, Torchy Blaine in Chinatown, The Blonde Comet, Blonde Ransom, Blonde Dynamite, The Ape Man, Voodoo Man, What a Man, Black Market Babies, Spook Busters, Hard Boiled Mahoney, that was in 1947, Gas House Kids Go West, Cuban Fireball, and Bela Lugosi Meets a Brooklyn Gorilla. And one you liked, I understand, Billy the Kid versus Dracula. That was 1966.
That was one. I think that was one of.
And his last film was that was 1966. Billy the Kid versus Dracula. Wow. And his last film, he died in 1970. His last film was in 1966. Jesse James Meets Frankenstein's Daughter.
And Jesse James made Dracula. That mishmash of genres really got me. But I mean, I say it got me. It's like when you and I would be watching afternoon horror films or late night horror films on regular TV.
I'd really love to see Get Off My Foot.
Get off! It just get off my. I love it because it's just not that dramatic, but yet something like that can happen. It really bothers me. Get off my foot! Yeah,
I mean, your mind can go anywhere as to what that film would have been about.
And some of those titles feel like that he had seen Ghostbusters, and so his version's going to be Spookbusters. But I'm starting to think that Spookbusters came out in 1940. And so that inspired Ghostbusters. I mean, just.
Well, I mean, at the same time, Abbott and Costello made a number of horror movie spoofs. They meet Godzilla and they meet the Wolfman and
right,
that kind of thing. So none of this stuff was really out of the mainstream, and it's kind of like. Oh gosh, every once in a while there'll be a big movie come out, and then there'll be a number of small movies that come after it with very similar type of titles.
Right.
And so that was not unusual even then, I suppose. So, but anyway, that was the thing that bothered me about this when I watched. I had read this book before I saw Ed Wood, which was in 1994. And this idea that he took things in one shot was not that case. He did not wear skirts.
Right.
But and a lot of it was made up in the way that any biography would be. You don't have a lot of detail, and they left out a number of things. After Plan 9, Ed Wood went into trying to write books. He wrote dime novels, as they called it at the time, and he also did softcore porn,
Right.
and then was became an alcoholic himself, and eventually died in his 50s, I think.
That was the other thing that came. When you think about a fetish, alcohol more than that in a way, but that the film follows that. It does show. It doesn't dive into that. Ed Wood does not dive into that. I kind of liked it. Just centered around the making of three films: Glinda, Glinda, The Atomic Bride,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
then Plan 9. After having watched Ed Wood again, I have not seen. I've seen clips of the first two films, Glinda, Glinda, but I haven't seen much of the Atomic Bride. I gotta watch that film because that octopus sequence has got to be fantastic in in Ed Wood's film.
Yeah, actually, Bela Lugosi did not wrestle the octopus. That was done with stunt doubles. But
Ah,
in of course in Ed Wood, they of course have Martin Landau do it, and I think that is really the reason to watch Ed Wood is for Martin Landau's performance there. We have seen him before in Mission Impossible and in Space 1999, and you would have thought that he was just some hack TV actor until he got into this, and he really made you believe that he was Bela Lugosi, which,
yeah.
by the way, is his name would have been pronounced Bela. The what was he,
Right.
Hungarian? He was Hungarian, was he?
Hungarian. Right.
Yeah, in Hungarian, Bella would be the female name, and Bela
Ah,
would be the male
Bela be
name.
the-
So it
you
was
know,
Bela Lugosi. But anyway, his way of doing the accent was something that was very interesting. He had gone and first of all took lessons in Hungarian, so he knew the
exactly.
language. Then he went and watched everything that he could find with Bela Lugosi in it, and then did not a character speaking with an accent, but a character trying not to speak with an accent, and
Trying
that's
to
how he
overcome.
played him, and it was masterful. I've never seen
Masterful.
Martin Landau in anything any better than that, and it re-energized his career.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I think Tucker, A Man in His Dream, comes out
Yeah,
after this. I think I may
I
be
believe
wrong
so.
on that, but but definitely the X Files movie comes out after Ed Wood. It comes out in '97, and it re-energized. And really, it's funny though when you think about the character he played in Mission Impossible, he brought a lot to that part. You really believed he was an authentic. He knew his makeup, he knew his voices. You
Yeah,
really believed that, and so he kind of brings that part of it. Must be in himself that wanting to learn the voice. Because you're exactly right. He learns Hungarian to the point, so he's trying to struggling to overcome his accent, and it was fantastic. And so that kind of you always see that in Mission Impossible, that kind of detail. There's such attention to detail that, and he brought it to this movie. He loved the film, and you could tell the background work he did.
he was the first actor, by the way, that received an Oscar for doing another actor. There've been a lot of biography films, but he was the first, and it wouldn't be done again for another 10 years when Kate Blanchett got Best Supporting Actress for playing Katharine Hepburn.
I'll be, if they had given Galaxy Quest even though it would have been a fictional actor, you could have given Alan Rickman an Oscar for playing for playing the actor he played
Yeah.
in Galaxy Quest in the TV show Galaxy Quest. But but we're thinking of it, and you brought up such a good point. To me, with Tim Burton, how you get this collection of details, and you've got to feel it. You're looking at making a narrative film. It's not a documentary, and so you're looking at where do I bring in parts of Ed Wood's life that might be fictionalized or exaggerated, like with the dresses that he would get in a dress, as if he would get in a dress because for inspiration when he needed to really be himself in the movie Ed Wood, he would come out in makeup and in a dress, and then he felt more confident as he directed. So obviously that didn't happen, but so you're looking at what does Tim Burton do, and in terms of making this film, and you could lean into making fun of Ed Wood, or you could making fun of him. You could make him look, silly. I mean, that does happen in the film, but he leaned into making him into a person that, believe it or not, and people could identify with,
Yeah.
especially if you're someone who maybe has been, like science fiction fans have generally been othered in our lives, and you look at somebody, so you could find it. So Tim Burton leans into that, finds that quality in Ed Wood,
Yeah.
and you can identify with him. And amazingly, you can identify with how he fit in or did not fit in, what made him tick in terms of creativity. It not necessarily, at some point just raw creativity. At some point you've got to stand back and say, no, we need a continuity person. They used to be called script girls, but we
Yeah.
need a continuity person. It's going to slow things down, but we got to pay attention to the details. That was not Ed Wood, but Tim Burton found other good things that you could identify with, and he comes up with a sympathetic film, and it's one of his best films.
It really
The
is,
way,
and I have to say something about how Johnny Depp played this. He
oh,
did. He claimed to use as his inspiration Ronald Reagan and the Tin Man from The Wizard of Oz to create this character, and he is wonderfully transparent when he's playing a character. You don't know who Johnny Depp is. From his various roles, because he's not playing himself in any of these. He completely envelopes what it is, who he is he's playing.
like Martin Landau did.
Very much so. Yeah.
Really become. Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, that's a great point about Johnny Depp. That's it. The work Martin Landau put into that. So you're thinking of Martin Landau as the actor, but Tim Burton was so seamless in doing this. I mean, Johnny Depp, that I didn't think, oh, that's Johnny Depp playing it. It just felt like a young guy, a director trying, doing everything he can to pull this group of his just to get a movie made.
There is something to be said about that, because according to what I found, the cost of making the opening title credits to Ed Wood was more than the cost of all of Ed Wood's films.
Of all of them.
All of them put together.
That is incredible. That is, no, it just, and yeah, and we were talking about some of the,
Because I mean, we're talking $80,000 for just Plan 9 from Outer Space, and that's an estimate. And in the case of Ed Wood, let's see. I then look in the wrong place. Hang on a second. There we are. Find out what they, because I'm thinking that they made this film for like 40 million or something like that.
Yeah, and it almost broke even, but it did not. And I think it actually, I would have loved to have seen it in theaters. I think I saw it about 2000 on DVD. The DVD is really good. It's got some nice features. Got that feature with Martin Landau where he talks about, and it's got some interesting deleted scenes where
Yeah. There we go. There we go. It was 18 million that they did it for, and it grossed 5 million.
5 million. Gotcha.
Yeah.
It lost more money than I thought. That's
yeah. Well, it's in black and white. It's hard to sell a black and white film.
Yeah, that's true. In 1994. That's it. Yeah, that was almost, it was almost before. Now I think a black and white sells almost a little bit better, because as a viewing audience, we are a little bit more, I think, cultured, educated as a viewing audience in terms, and we might actually say, oh, it's black and white. That's got a point. Why is that in black and white? That could be unique. But in 94, that you would have had to, you'd kind of have to overcome an obstacle and then go to the movie and go, okay, now I get why it's in black and white.
It's kind of interesting in the old days, from the time that Technicolor first came on the scene in about 1938. You made fantasy films in color, and you made realistic films in black and white.
Right. And then this has reversed it by
yeah.
Just because we're going back to the low budget films from the 50s.
Yeah.
Was he, in your research, was Ed Wood a fan of Orson Welles.
Yes,
Was
he was.
ah
They never met. They never met, but he saw himself in the same light of a struggling filmmaker. And I think that the
that the studio
comparison,
then takes control of his films.
yeah, well, in this case, he doesn't have any problem with the studios.
True.
He is basically financing his own films. He rents the studio space, and his biggest problem is getting a distributor. And the big film companies aren't going to touch it. And he went to something called Associated Distribution Company, and another called States Rights Distribution, which I believe there are only like 25 copies of Plan 9 that circulated around the drive-ins around the country.
States' rights. That sounds like a Southern association.
I believe it was, yeah.
Yeah, that
Oddly
was.
enough.
So Orson Welles, that's an interesting scene. And it's funny, the article that the article that we both had read, where this guy takes pains to criticize Tim Burton, basically saying you're by making this film, you are saying your films, which have been criticized for being pastiche and put together and not real art, you're saying, no, my art is more real than Ed Wood, even though I'm paying tribute to Ed Wood. It was such a complicated insult to Tim Burton. And I really think back to it's no, it's Tim Burton really is making a pretty darn good movie that is about the worst, supposedly the worst director in the world, but it comes across and somehow we relate to his efforts and we relate to him, and it's amazing. And so he even criticized in that article, which we both read, he even criticizes the scene with Orson Welles. And and I thought, no, that was a well done scene. And it's
Yeah.
almost like he's saying his criticism was so strange. It was like, well, it wasn't authentic. Well, Wells was dead by 1994. You couldn't get him, so he was kind of criticizing him for using his voice and then using another actor to play the side of his head. And I'm thinking, actually, I thought it was a pretty good composite. It sounded like Orson Welles, and from
Yeah.
the back of his head, I thought the scene worked, and it inspired Ed Wood. Another thing that I thought a detail that Tim Burton was, he must work with terrific production designers, because he's coming off Batman,
Yeah.
where the production designer was brilliant, but by this film he had committed suicide. The production designer had.
Yeah.
So now he's working with, I'm looking for his name, really good, Tim. Shoot, I'm gonna have to. Tim, production designer. Well, phooey, I have lost it. Really good.
We're working with it now. My computer is kind of lagging on me for some reason, which has caused me to lose names and dates.
To lose that, yeah. And I had. Oh, I know where I wrote this one down.
Okay, production designer. Production designer is
First name is Tim, and Tim. I've got Duffield. And he might, how they have different.
Yeah.
Tim Duffield, and
Duffield,
he worked so hard on this. He wanted to see. He took a ton of Polaroids, and apparently, I'm thinking Polaroids usually being in color. I couldn't quite. It sounded like, but anyway, he wanted to see what, if he on wallpaper, paint on the wall, anything in the set design in the background, how is that going to photograph on black and white? So and they spent a lot of money. Also, they looked at all the production stills from whenever Ed Wood would work with Bela Lugosi and in this film to try and replicate everything in the background. Plus, how is it going to photograph in black and white? What kind of color tinting do I need to do to the set? And as you talked about last time, red does not necessarily photograph well. So he used a lot of in black to as a cell for black and white. So he used a lot of different shades of green in. But and
they had to whiten Martin Landau. He was a tanned fellow, and they had to actually put more white makeup on him in order to make him look more like Bela Lugosi. They did some applications on him too, but some appliances, chin and They did ears, but then decided not to use them. But they did have to grease paint his face because he didn't look ghoulish enough.
Didn't look ghoulish enough even in real life. or Martin Landau.
Martin Landau.
Bela
Yeah,
Lugosi. Another couple of things he mentioned was, we even mentioned, I love the way the production designer, you think about your screenwriter, but everybody knows, some of the three layers of filmmaking: plot, subplot, and theme. And so he viewed his job as production designer was to reinforce the theme a lot of the time. So he would put one place, I actually caught this watching it. I thought one of the funniest scenes when Sarah Jessica Parker, she's furious with Ed Wood. He's given up. She's the girlfriend at the time, and he's given her part to, it's actually Martin Landau's and Barbara Bain's daughter. Her name is Juliet Landau.
Yes.
He'd given the part to her. And so from that, and and she's saying, "I'll give you all my money everything I have if you'll put me in this. No, this role looks good. The girlfriend." And Johnny Depp is going, okay. And from there, you cut to a saucer-like plate that's being thrown like a frisbee, wham, across the room. Saucer. And then the production designer, Tim Duffield, mentioned, look, in a lot of scenes, everywhere he could, he'd put the saucer-like, something saucer-like in the background, like shapes of lights, or where, like, there's a scene where Bill Murray, they're all sitting in a cafe, and it's like there's a saucer that's over them. And so it just wonderful that reinforces this theme of flying saucers. And then another scene that's just a small scene, but it's so cool. The scene in the carnival is a terrific, where Ed Wood tells the second girlfriend, who later became his wife, that he's a transvestite, or dresses as women, and likes to dress in women's clothing. And that scene where it's like a little funhouse ride, they come up to the ride, and they get in the car, and it's like where the little like a roller coaster, but it takes them through various rooms, and they see these scenes of skeletons. But apparently Tim Burton was a real fan of Edvard Munch, and so they did a lot of that stuff behind the scenes is painted like that, and it looks great.
Yeah, it's an interesting film, and I find that what makes it more interesting is that there's some pretty big actors in this doing pretty small parts. I mean, Bill Murray wasn't even supposed to have any lines, and because he was Bill Murray and wanted to, they gave him some as Bunny Breckenridge. Bunny Breckenridge, the actual actor in Plan 9, was a burlesque performer, which we would call drag queen today, and play with them. And Plan 9 was the first film that he'd ever been in.
That was the first.
He was the general of the alien army.
That's right. That's exactly right. Bill Murray. When I'm thinking of Bill Murray, yeah, that's exactly right. But you think of him in the role that you see in Ed Wood, but you're right. That translating back to Plan 9, that's exactly who he was. The very unusual general of the alien army.
Yes.
And apparently, I wonder if now in Ed Wood, Bill Murray's character talks about going to Mexico. Oh, that's right. That was where he was going to get a sex change operation, and it didn't work for Bunny.
Right.
The actual and there's a scene in Ed Wood that's it's a deleted scene, focusing on this character, where Bunny / Bill Murray sings "Que Sera Sera" in the meatpacking plant where they shot some of the movie.
Yeah.
And he's serenaded by Latino musicians, and it's just a strange deleted scene. I did not see where it would go. It would.
They say it's not unusual for Bill Murray to go off on a tangent, which is why a lot of people don't like to work for him. The only person that he'll actually just go by the script is Wes Anderson for one reason or other.
He'll stick with the script.
Yeah.
I can see him saying, hey, I've got to do this. I'll do que sera.
Yeah.
That's what about there was one actor in Ed Wood that he was one of the two cops. There's a bunch of cops, but there was especially two
Yeah.
cops, and one of the two cops in Ed Wood. You see him all the time in Ed Wood. He's helping all the time. He's kind of one of the younger helpers who's I can't remember. Ed Wood even says to him at one point, "Hey, like come on, use your sense." But does that ring a bell in terms of who that actor was? One of the two cops
Oh
in
gosh.
Plan 9. Didn't mean to throw you but Bunny kind of going into those characters that were in Ed Wood, but they were the two cops um, in Ed Wood. Let me see if I can find him.
I'm
Uh,
pulling up Plan 9 again, and
right.
Conrad Brooks was one of the policemen,
I think
and
that may be him.
yeah,
But I had seen the actor that plays him in Ed Wood quite a bit, and
and Tor Johnson's son played a farmer, although he was the
that was
one
Tor
he
Johnson.
was he was the one that got the police cars and the police uniforms loaned to them. They did that for no money, and who
And
knows
Tor
if the police
Johnson
force knew
rescues the
that.
woman.
Yeah,
Tor Johnson's son rescues the woman from his
yeah,
father.
right. Yes,
Now that
yeah,
because the farmer drives up and saves her. Yeah, that's
yeah. Maybe the first time he had been in a film. I'm not sure. One of the things in Plan 9 that somebody
now,
pointed out was the tomb that everybody came out of was about the size of a phone booth, and there were about 5 people that came out of it.
yes, yes. And
Someone
they make such
suggested
a
it might be a TARDIS.
yeah. Yet another inspiration. Everything comes from 6 degrees of Plan 9. I
There
mean,
you go.
everything or set whatever. You know.
Yeah, 6. Yeah. Well, I think we've had our fun, and I know you have
We have
places
had
to go this time, but
the only thing that the music was by Howard Shore,
yeah,
and apparently he did get a theremin. And but it's funny. Some movies you think you like, you watch the movie and you go, "Wow, the theremin was all over the place."
it was.
Um, but apparently he actually did use a theremin in this film.
Well, they used it in Forbidden Planet. I think that was the first time they ever used a theremin for a film, and then it became something every B movie was doing afterwards. It seems like.
Right, right. And then Howard Shore definitely wanted to go back and get it. But
Yeah.
it's interesting. Apparently, something had because Bill Murray's go-to director, excuse me, Tim Burton's go-to director, go to Tim Burton's go-to composer was not
Yes.
used in this film. Um, say that again.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Like the composer for Batman uh,
Oh,
is who Tim Burton usually uses, and I'm trying to remember him. A very good
gosh.
composer, but apparently there was a little bit of something that had happened between the two, and that in this case went to Howard Shore. But it's a really good, a good score anyway. And we can find that
I
because
almost have it.
we have fans hollering at us right now. And let's see. Did not.
Hans Zimmer,
Yes. No. No. For Batman, it was
Danny Elfman. Danny
Right.
Elfman.
Right.
Yeah,
And
that's a wonderful thing about Google. First, they give me for the Batman, which was Michael Giacchino, and then Hans Zimmer, Danny Elfman, and
Right.
everybody else that's ever done it,
you know,
including I think the TV show.
I had one more quick question.
Yeah.
That ride at the ride at the carnival where you actually get in the car and then stuff is done to you as you ride. I think Walt Disney World has got a ride. The Ghost ride was like that. You get in there and all of a sudden you're in this car. And I said roller coaster. That's not right, but you're in a car and these things all happen to. I have not been in any mini rides like that. Have you been in any mini rides like that? Was that kind of
No,
a thing?
no.
No.
I've never been big on amusement park rides, honestly, but I remember Six Flags when I was like 7, and
Right.
that's probably the last time I was in any kind of amusement park, non roller coaster kind of ride.
Non-roller coaster, right? That was like that. Yeah, that's. I remember being in one and at the very end, you're in the car, and at the very end, a gorilla puts his arms on your ears.
Yikes! No,
Yeah,
the one we had at Six Flags was it was logs going, down a chute. I'm not quite sure why. It was a hollowed out log. It was fiberglass, I guess, but I mean, it looked like a logging
oh, right. Log. Yeah, that was a
thing.
good ride. That was a terrific ride. And I just also wanted to thank you for that. The Michael Medved book is so good
Yeah,
on, on these films, and there is, and I think he takes an approach. Golden Turkey. You can get unbelievably cynical with this. I don't think he gets necessarily
no,
that cynical.
obviously he was somebody that also loved films, and
Exactly.
I think while he's making gentle fun of them, you have to admire these people who knew they didn't have the kind of budget to make something for Fox or Warner Brothers or
Yeah.
uh, Disney, but that they could do something and they could get it out there and they could be a filmmaker. And
Right.
to some people, that's enough. I mean, I've
That.
been, I was in radio and I used to like to visit some of the smaller stations whenever I was traveling, Busman's Holiday. And I always had a rather warm feeling of people who had, a staff of 3, including the owner,
Yeah.
that kept a place going all the time, and they did it with 20-year-old equipment. They did it with almost no money, but they had the desire to put the show on. You got to
Right.
make the broadcast,
Put the
and in
show
this
on.
case, they got to make the movies, and you got to admire them for that.
Yeah, like in evaluating movies for like film festivals, you always have to just you kind just the act of getting the thing made with very limited resources. You just got to say,
We've
okay,
both seen
that's
our
from there.
we yeah we've
Yeah,
both seen our share of student productions, and
yeah,
there are a lot of films that are made at the inside of school hallways,
yep,
on playgrounds, near an air conditioning plant or something like that.
that's true. Guilty as charged. That's
I did that last one just for you.
yeah. Thank you. Oh, what a fun film. We'll figure out what to do next time. I don't know where we're
Yeah,
going to go next, but we'll figure it out.
yeah, yeah. If you have any suggestions, put it below, and we'll consider it. And
Absolutely.
yeah, so thank you very much, Professor O, and thank you all for watching. So come back and see us next week. Until then, don't go far.